Look, you will recall when I spoke to Pauline Hanson on Thursday night, she expressed her indignation about, quote, welcome to country, the almost permanent feature at the beginning of any function anywhere, be it the opening of parliaments, the opening of an art exhibition, an academic conference, a school assembly, and indeed the State of Origin last night. It's everywhere. Pauline Hanson had this to say.
You know what? I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm fed up with it. I'm sick of hearing it on the Qantas flights. That was brought in by Ernie Dingo. It's not part of their culture. And more it's encroaching on our rights. I don't believe in giving acknowledgement to anyone past, present or future. People have to earn that respect, not that you're made to say it.
Very good. Very good. 6 years ago, I drew attention to guidelines issued by the University of New South Wales. Guidelines which at the time the university said were designed to help students avoid unintentionally offending Indigenous peers. The guidelines suggested that we shouldn't say Captain Cook discovered Australia because the word discover was offensive. They wanted to use the word invaded. The guidelines about prescribed readings at the university said, quote, Australia was not settled peacefully, it was invaded, occupied and colonised. Unquote. The guidelines said, quote, describing the arrival of the Europeans as a settlement attempts to view Australian history from the shores of England rather than the shores of Australia, unquote. Adding, quote, most Aboriginal people find the use of the word discovery offensive. Well, the then Dean of the University of New South Wales Law School, Professor David Dixon, said the guidelines were commonplace across tertiary institutions and many public sector organisations. Interestingly, the then Federal Education Minister, one Simon Birmingham, dripping wet with a spine that he must have bought in Kmart, said, quote, as has always been the case in Australia, universities enjoy autonomy when it comes to academic concepts and what they teach their students, unquote. Let me say something at the outset. If someone wants to mount an historic argument about whether Australia was invaded or colonised by Europeans, whether it was discovered by Europeans or Aborigines, that's fine. There is often no right or wrong answer in the study of history. The arguments need to be put in proper context, but nothing in the teaching of history can justify restricting the thinking of university students by some so-called diversity toolkit on Indigenous terminology, which dictates that Cook's arrival in New South Wales must be referred to as an invasion. This brings into focus the work of the Australian historian Keith Windschuttle. Keith Windschuttle is on record as saying, quote, whenever Labor governments have gained power in the past decade, they've made it compulsory for every government instrumentality and many independent organisations they fund to begin every public meeting with a ceremonial acknowledgement of Aboriginal traditional landowners, unquote. Wrote Windschuttle, this ritual is now virtually inescapable. From the opening of state and federal parliaments to writers' festivals, art exhibitions, academic conferences, school assemblies, indeed anywhere those in the public sector gather.